What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to today's post-game flow. We got some more rotational work to complement our pre-game here, and we're starting out with some half kneeling rotating for the T-spine. As you can see here, I begin in the half kneeling position, and I'm starting out by taking that arm and pushing it as far under me as I possibly can toward the opposite wall. And then as I rotate and open up, I place my hand behind my head, pinch my shoulder blades together, and I use my eyes to follow my elbow toward the ceiling. Now, I have a very inflexible T-spine. This is probably one of my weakest areas. This is a very hard movement for me to do because I've got some tight T-spine action happening here. So as you can see, my butt is a little bit lifted off my heels. It would be optimal if you guys could sit a little bit more on your heels while you do this and isolate your T-spine just a little bit more. But for me, I had to lift my butt up just a little bit to be able to compensate there. However, I am still doing a good bit of T-spine protraction and retraction. There is where I'm protracting as I crawl my fingers through, and there is where the retractions happen and squeezing my shoulder blades together and making sure that I'm following my elbow toward the ceiling with my eyes. You guys are gonna do about 10 to 12 reps of this on each side. This one is not fun. It's definitely gonna make you a little bit achy, and you may even start shaking while you're doing it. That is actually a good thing, especially if you feel activation in areas that you don't normally feel it. Second movement we have here is going to be our half kneeling squat, our full kneeling squat into our psoas opener. We've done a psoas opener during a flow before, but psoas is one of those muscles that gets very locked up from sitting for prolonged periods of time, kind of like the iliacus does as well. That whole hip flexor unit tends to kind of get jacked up. So here I go, sitting back again, and now I'm going to complement that with a bridged ceiling reach. I'm alternating arms, bridging my hips toward the ceiling to open up that front side, following once again my hand with my eyes toward the wall behind me, bring myself back up again, and now I'm going for my psoas opener. So left leg forward, making sure that I'm squeezing my belly and my butt as I drive myself forward. I'm not compensating by arching my back at all, making sure that I'm trying to tuck my hips in so I can really open the front side of that hip up. And now sitting back on the heels again for the alternating bridged reach. Big bridge, once again, squeezing the glutes as hard as I can there, making sure I'm tightening up the core as well so I can feel that sensation of the hips being opened up, and following my hand with my eyes. And once again, we are back up out of the squat. Again, left leg forward, I'm doing my core check. It's very important to think of it like when you're taking your pelvis and you're trying to tuck your pelvis in as you drive forward, that's how you're gonna experience the stretching sensation in the front of the hip. You may even feel it all the way down the quad toward the knee. That just means you got tight quads. Every time you do this for the 5 to 8 reps that you do it for, you're gonna feel yourself push a little bit further forward. You also, during the bridge, may feel yourself able to push your hips higher every time, as well as you may get a little bit further back with your arm. If you have one side that feels like it's easier to reach on than the other, you may have some tension in some of the areas in your hips and back. Here's one of my personal favorites. This is just a half kneeling cossack squat. So what I'm gonna do here is sit all the way back on my heels, keeping my chest up. I'm feeling a great stretching sensation in the groin on that left leg, maybe even a little bit into the hamstring, and I'm stretching my quad on that right side when I'm sitting onto my heel, feeling a really big quad stretch. This is also really good for the calves and ankle complex as well, because we're putting all that body weight and sitting onto the calves. We're also stretching the anterior tib, which is a very, it's just not stretched very often or even addressed in many athletic communities, but including esports. The tib is kind of elusive. And as I'm sitting back, I'm making sure that I'm trying to keep my foot completely against the ground. If I keep my foot completely down, gripping my toes, I'm gonna feel that a little bit more in the groin and the adductors. And if I lift my toes up and rotate it all, it may transfer into the hamstrings just a little bit. Once again, you see me checking my core there to make sure I'm nice and locked up and I'm not arching my back excessively. This is once again a great compliment. We love unilateral work because it helps you understand the differences and asymmetries in your body as you're moving. Oftentimes we may feel like we are not twisted up in the hips and core, We may not have any asymmetries, but as soon as you do some unilateral work, some one-sided work, you're definitely going to see that it's there. You can see on this side, I'm actually much smoother with the sit back because I have a little bit of issues with my right knee. It's an old training injury, but I'm able to get around it. So moving forward now, we're going to be working into our unfurl, which is one of my favorite movements. I'm going to push myself into a child's pose, and then I'm going to roll from a down dog into a cobra. And notice how my knees are down on the ground here, making sure that I'm keeping my ears away from my shoulders. That's a big thing when it comes to the cobra. Pushing myself into that child's pose again, making sure I'm feeling, and then as I go to drive into the down dog, I'm lifting and I'm pretending like someone's pulling my butt toward the ceiling with a string. And that's how I'm kind of accessing that hamstring stretch, and I roll like you would see an ocean wave roll right into cobra. Once again, pushing myself slowly back into down dog, making sure I'm feeling that in the lower back, maybe even a little bit into the groin and hips and the T-spine, lifting my butt toward the ceiling, popping up on my toes there and rolling like a wave. Knees touch back down, slowly bringing my whole spine into extension. You see, I even bring my head and my C-spine into extension. So I'm going for lumbar extension, T-spine extension, and C-spine extension, all of the above. Driving myself once again into child's pose, and someone lifting my butt up toward the ceiling, and I'm rolling myself all the way into that cobra position again. Knees on the ground, slowly entering full spinal extension and making sure that I'm keeping my shoulders away from my ears. We don't want that to get bunched up. If my shoulders were jammed up into my ears there, I would be a little bit out of position, and I wouldn't be holding my core and my T-spine quite as tight as I should. Again, rolling in. This one I like to do a solid 5 to 8 reps of, and I like to take it very slow. As you can see by today's flow, we're only doing at maximum 5 to 8 reps of each movement, but we are taking our sweet time and being extremely intentional with it. Intent is massively important when it comes to this kind of thing. You can muddle through these and go as fast as you want, but if you're not actually creating the movement we're looking for, we're not doing what we should be doing. Thank you guys for tuning in to today's post game. We're looking forward to seeing you back. Cheers.